October 24, 1929, Black Thursday. In just 6 hours, Americans lost $14 billion. 13 million shares vanished in panic, but few know the crash started with one man, Sunshine Charlie, banker Charles Mitchell. 7 months earlier, Charles Mitchell spoke a line meant to protect the American economy. Instead, it activated the machinery of the worst financial disaster in history. The Great Depression stretched across 10 brutal years and reshaped an entire generation. 25 million Americans lost their jobs, nearly every fourth person. 5,000 banks shut their doors forever, taking the savings of millions with them. 2 million people were left homeless. Families slept in cardboard shelters inside tent cities bitterly named Hoovervilles. Suicides jumped by 30%. In a nation that had just called itself the richest on earth, citizens now stood in long lines waiting for free bread. But how did it start? In the 1920s, America was riding an extraordinary wave of growth. The Roaring Twenties delivered Ford cars, radios in every home, packed jazz clubs, and skyscrapers climbing into the sky. Prosperity felt endless. The future looked guaranteed. And in the middle of that optimism, one man stepped forward who would turn the dream of wealth into a nightmare for millions. Charles Edwin Mitchell was born in 1877 to a farming family in Massachusetts. Nothing suggested that a farmer's son would become the most powerful banker in America and quietly reshape the fate of a nation. By 1919, Mitchell led National City Bank, the largest bank in the country, holding assets of $2.7 billion. That amount exceeded the national budgets of most countries at the time. But Mitchell carried a radical vision. Before him, stocks were toys for the rich. Only about 500,000 Americans owned them, less than 1% of the population. Regular people saved money in banks or bought bonds. Wall Street belonged to elites. Mitchell saw something different. Every American should be a capitalist, he said. Why should wealth belong only to the wealthy? In 1920, Mitchell launched a subsidiary called National City Company. Its mission was simple: sell stocks to ordinary Americans inside local bank branches. When someone came to open a savings account, they were invited to buy into the American dream. Mitchell transformed stock selling into a science. He studied psychology, human desire, and the ambitions of everyday families. His salespeople filled 69 branches nationwide. They weren't dull bankers, they were trained dream merchants. Advertising exploded. Newspapers promised riches from just $15 a month. Become a partner of American Telephone and Telegraph. Your children will be proud. You're an investor. Magazines told stories of secretaries getting rich and streetcar drivers buying homes with dividends. Salespeople pushed harder. Mr. Johnson, you don't want to work for someone else forever, do you? General Electric is your chance to control your destiny. Or, Mrs. Smith, your husband works for Ford. Why not become a co-owner? Offices displayed posters of smiling families, large houses, and expensive cars. Everything whispered the same promise: this could be your life. But Mitchell's real brilliance hid inside a dangerous credit trick. Stocks could be bought on margin. Investors paid only 10% of their own cash and borrowed the rest from the bank. Put down $100 and control $1,000 in stocks. If prices climbed 20%, the profit became $200. Your money doubled overnight. Salespeople explained it with easy stories. Mr. Brown bought Radio Corporation for $500 using only $50 of his own. 6 months later, the stock rose $150. His return? 300%. Your savings account would have earned just 15. Compared to that, the bank suddenly felt useless. The response stunned even Mitchell. From 1925 to 1929, loans for stock buying exploded from $2 billion to $8.5 billion, a 425% surge in 4 years. Stock ownership jumped from 500,000 Americans to 10 million. A teacher in Ohio mortgaged her home for Radio Corporation shares. A Kansas farmer sold cattle to buy General Motors stock. A Detroit mechanic risked 6 months of pay on Ford. Everyone believed they had found the road to wealth, and Mitchell enjoyed the praise. He became known as Wall Street's Democrat. In 1928, he earned $1.2 million, about $20 million today. Magazines crowned him the man turning Americans into millionaires, but Mitchell pushed further. He built investment trusts that bought stocks with borrowed money. Those trusts sold shares that were again bought on credit. Debt stacked on debt, supported only by faith that prices would rise forever. By early 1929, even optimists grew uneasy. Stock prices ran far ahead of the economy. The Federal Reserve warned the market was overheating. Major stocks traded at 15 times annual profits, a level now seen as bubble territory. On February 6, the Fed ordered banks to stop fueling speculation and limit margin loans. The effect was immediate. In March, stocks slipped, billions disappeared within days, panic spread. Many believed the bubble had burst. Then on March 12, Mitchell stepped in. At a press conference he promised National City Bank would supply all the liquidity the market needed. Newspapers cheered, Sunshine Charlie saves Wall Street. Prices rebounded fast. Losses vanished and records followed. After that, madness ruled. During the summer of 1929, stocks surged to historic highs. The Dow climbed to 381, untouched for 25 years. 3 million newcomers rushed in before the crash. Jewelry was pawned, shoe shiners gave advice, children bought stocks, clerks felt rich, chauffeurs bought mansions, secretaries wore fur. America drowned in the illusion of endless wealth, while beneath it waited mathematical disaster. Subscribe for more stories about money, power, and hidden mistakes. Every dollar invested in stocks was backed by only 10 cents of real money. A 10% drop wiped out a margin investor instantly. A 50% fall meant they owed the bank more than they earned in a year. What looked powerful was actually built on weakness. By the fall of 1929, smart money became uneasy. Large institutions, pension funds, insurance companies, and banks noticed danger signs ordinary people missed. First, the economy was slipping. Factory production slowed, car sales declined, and new home construction dropped, yet stock prices kept climbing as if reality no longer mattered. The divide between Wall Street and the real economy became dangerous. Second, experienced investors understood margin mathematics. When 90% of the market's money was borrowed, even a small decline could turn into disaster. Joseph Kennedy later said, "When the shoe shiner started giving me stock advice, I knew it was time to sell." Third, insiders followed Federal Reserve plans closely. The central bank prepared to raise interest rates, making margin loans costly and triggering selling. Big players quietly took profits. They sold in small pieces so the market would not crash too early. By October, patience vanished. Some banks learned the Bank of England planned to raise rates, forcing the Fed to follow. On the morning of October 24, 1929, New York's largest funds made a coordinated choice. Time to exit. Massive blocks of shares hit the market together. Prices slipped, then collapsed. By noon, panic ruled Wall Street. That day, a record 13 million shares were dumped, 5 times normal volume. Brokers were overwhelmed. Telephone lines failed. The domino chain Mitchell's system created finally started. First domino, falling prices forced banks to demand more money from margin traders. Second domino, investors had no cash and were forced to sell, pushing prices lower. Third domino, collapsing prices destroyed stocks as collateral, stopping credit. Fourth domino, banks loaded with margin loans began failing, starting with those built on Mitchell's model. October 29, Black Tuesday, delivered the final blow. In one day, Americans lost $14 billion, more than the United States spent during all of World War I. Behind the numbers lived tragedy. Edward Hopkins, a Detroit mechanic, invested $5,000, his life savings, in Ford. By November it was worth $200, and the bank demanded $3,000 more. Hopkins hanged himself in his garage. Mary Field, a teacher from Ohio, mortgaged her parents' home for Radio Corporation stock. After the crash, the bank seized the house, leaving 3 generations homeless. In New York, lines formed not only at banks but on bridges. Suicides reached records. The Brooklyn Bridge became a symbol of despair. American society split over Charles Mitchell. Newspapers painted him in opposite colors. The New York Times branded him the architect of financial disaster, the man who turned the American dream into a nightmare. Ordinary Americans despised him. On New York streets, crowds booed when he appeared. A Detroit paper wrote, "Charles Mitchell stole more than any bank robber. A thief takes cash, but Mitchell took the future from an entire generation." Yet he also had defenders. Business leaders argued Mitchell forced no one to buy stocks. People chose greed over caution themselves. Former colleagues claimed Sunshine Charlie was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Any banker in his position, they said, would have acted the same. Ironically, National City Bank survived and even grew stronger. After Mitchell resigned, new management shut down risky operations and focused on conservative lending. The government supported the bank as too big to fail. As rivals collapsed, National City absorbed their assets for pennies. By 1935, it controlled a larger market share than before the crash. Mitchell faded into obscurity. After his trial, he moved to Europe, advising small banks. Returning in the 1940s, he opened a modest investment firm. Sunshine Charlie became an old man remembered mainly as a symbol of 1920s greed. He died in 1955 at 78, never admitting responsibility for the Depression. The disaster reshaped American finance. In 1933, Congress passed the Glass-Steagall Act, separating commercial and investment banking so depositors' money could not be gambled away. The Securities and Exchange Commission was created. Deposit insurance followed. Margin trading faced strict limits. America swore this collapse would never return. Then came harsher moves. In April 1933, President Roosevelt banned private gold ownership. Citizens had to surrender coins and bars at fixed prices. It let the government expand money supply and fight deflation. Americans turned in over 3,600 tons of gold. A year later, Washington raised gold's price from $20 to $35 an ounce, earning billions from confiscated metal. The scars lasted generations. Recovery took a decade. Millions never trusted markets again, hiding savings under mattresses. Nearly a century later, the pattern feels familiar. Millions trade stocks on phones. Margin debt hits records. Apps promise easy wealth. Borrowed money chases crypto and meme stocks. The same machinery Mitchell built runs again. His story warns how good intentions can end in catastrophe. When finance promises effortless riches, remember Sunshine Charlie and ask who truly profits. If you want more stories that expose how money really works, subscribe now and stay one step ahead of the next crash.